So what in the world is Petitgrain, and what does Petitgrain smell like? Well, you're going to find out today in this video because it's one of my favorite citrus notes. I'm going to tell you all about it, plus I'm going to offer you 10 different fragrances that features this note. Some of the fragrances you're probably really familiar with. There are some inexpensive ones here, there are some very popular ones, and I'm throwing in some that actually feature this note pretty dominantly so that it smells like it. Anyway, you're going to find out all about Petitgrain and some fragrances featuring this note coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. That's right, today we're talking about Petitgrain, a very favorite citrus note of mine, basically coming from the bitter orange tree leaves, and it's used quite a bit in perfumery. And it's usually used a lot in citrus fragrances because it complements other citrus notes. So we'll do all that, but before we do that, if this is your first time tuning in and you still haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So what is Petitgrain and what does it smell like? What does Petitgrain smell like? So Petitgrain gets its name from the fact that they used to extract from unripe small green fruits of the orange tree. It means a small grain, Petitgrain. So Petitgrain is an essential oil extracted from the leaves and green twigs of the bitter orange tree, basically also known as bigarad, and it's extracted via steam distillation. Now, similar to Neroli, it comes from the same tree. Neroli comes from the same tree as the Petitgrain comes, but once extracted, they have completely different smells. Neroli is from the flowers of the bitter orange tree, and Petitgrain is from the twigs, branches, leaves. So the Petitgrain smells of green, woody, and orange citruses. So this is exciting, right? It's used quite a bit in a lot of like colognes, citrus fragrances, anything that usually features fragrances that are dominantly neroli and orange blossom. You'll see it come up there. Sometimes though, I do see it appear without those notes, but most of the time I'm seeing it with those notes. Does that make sense to you guys? So as a kid, I used to actually play around citrus trees, orange trees, and things like that. And I was always very curious of the smells because I can always smell the tree from far away, because either when they're blooming or you know they're fragrant with warmth out there, you can kind of smell a tree. You can also smell the citrus parts of it, the floral parts of it, the woody parts of it. It's all there. But I was very curious as a kid. I'd take the leaves and I'd break it in half. And if you look at it very carefully, in there's oils. You can see it kind of pop. Now that is where the smell of the Petitgrain comes from. Not necessarily, you know, in your basic orange tree, but because they are known to come from bitter orange trees, but it's pretty much the same idea. So if you like that smell, if you like the smell of the leaves of the orange tree and the flowers, you're going to really love this note because it's a very, very universally loved note, and I think a lot of people do enjoy this kind of note. But the thing is, it's bitter. It goes bitter. Now yesterday I did a video on a fragrance called Le Frenchy from Guerlain. It utilizes the Petitgrain note quite dominantly at the top notes, and it adds in increases or kind of like amplifies the bitterness of a few other notes that were also in the top. So if you're complementing two bitter notes together, you're going to get a little more astringent kind of bitter qualities. All right, so the first fragrance that I wanted to point out is from a house called HERMES. It's Eau d'Orange Verte Concentré, although when I first was experiencing it back in 2001, it was just the original version. Like several years later, they reformulated and they launched the concentrate version and then the regular version. But this was my very first experience with this note. Now, my research says that they don't mention Petitgrain, they mention orange leaves, but I feel like that's the same thing pretty much. Maybe it doesn't come from the bitter orange tree, it comes from a basic orange tree, but the end result of this fragrance is a very bitter, sweet, woody orange experience, and it's really, really dominantly featured here. So this fragrance has oranges, orange leaves, lemons, oak moss, mint, and mandarin, and basically is very woody, but it's also very orange citrusy, and there are some lemony touches here. The Petitgrain is definitely here. It's very bitter. Oak moss, mint, mandarin. It's a wonderful, wonderful fragrance. So I feel like this was my very first real experience, like really curious experience of a fragrance that featured this note, and I was like intrigued by it and intrigued by the smell. So this goes back to 2001 for me, but it was launched quite a bit earlier. If you like the bitter orangey kind of a smell with the Petitgrain, definitely check this one out. I prefer the concentrate version over the regular version because the concentrate version reminds me of the original fragrance when I first bought it, and I really love the way it smells. Anyway, check that out. The second fragrance was the same year, but towards the end of the year. It's from a house called MUGLER, and this is Cologne. Currently it's called MUGLER Cologne Come Together because they launch additional fragrances that are part of this like cologne series in different colors, but the original in the green is the original fragrance. So this was my second experience and kind of like really figuring out what notes are and things like that, and discovering the fact that there's Petitgrain or the orange leaves and things like that. But this is actually a universally loved or community loved fragrance, community loved fragrance. It's not necessarily very expensive, it's a fairly inexpensive, or if you can get it on sale, but it's a basic citrus, very soapy, loads of neroli, loads of bergamot, orange blossom, musk, and of course we can't forget the Petitgrain here because it's in here. There's a bitterness in here, but it's also sweet, but that note shines in here. See, here it's complementing the neroli and also the orange blossom, so it's just like the Petitgrain kind of goes hand in hand with those notes, and they work wonderfully together because after all, they're coming from the same tree, so they have to complement one another, whereas the leaves are more twiggy, kind of woody, green and bitter and you know, earthy smelling. The flowers can go sweet and more citric, but then again the whole tree itself is just an amazing tree, and they've done a really wonderful job with this one. As I was saying, this was my second discovery, or a fragrance that I really fell in love with, that I kind of like started looking into and figuring out that it features this Petitgrain note. I did that in late 2001 here in San Francisco. I had just joined the gym and I was using this as a after shower, you know, kind of a gym fragrance. I think I would also wear it at the gym every once in a while, but I enjoyed it after a shower because, you know, you get that very clean, soapy feel from it. Anyway, MUGLER Cologne, it's a great, great fragrance. One of my favorite fragrances that features Petitgrain. So that is that. Now this next one is a bit of an oddball here. It features Petitgrain very, very prominently. Like, it's probably one of the main players, but there's so much going on in the fragrance that you experience it, but it's less citrusy than others. Although here, it's not used with a lot of citruses. This is LALIQUE's white, and it's got loads of Petitgrain, nicely meshed with black pepper and tamarind note. So the thing is, the tamarind is a kind of a tart, kind of a bean pod like I don't know, I guess fruit, I would say like a fruit or a legume, I don't know what I would call it, but I've eaten plenty of tamarind and it's really, really sour. Here it's pretty prominent, but Petitgrain is also sour, tart, bitter, and black pepper is spicy, and then they throw in some bergamot as well, so the whole combination is a kind of a citrus, aromatic, woody, spicy kind of a concoction. I feel like this is more of a skin scent, but a kind of a substantial skin scent, because some of the spices and the bitterness of the Petitgrain kind of like make it a little more oomphy than a regular skin scent. But the fragrance is white after all, that's what it's called, and I feel like it's a clean, very, very soft, I don't know if I would use a soft word though. I'm not going to use that word right now, but it acts like it's a very soft and pleasant kind of musky kind of a fragrance utilizing this Petitgrain note, and of course the black pepper, the bergamot, and the tamarind note. Those are the main players here, and you can experience it. If you like bittersweet fragrances, more bitter, less sweet, and a little more kind of like a musky, clean kind of a fragrance, then definitely LALIQUE's white should satisfy you. And the first three fragrances I've spoken about so far should be able to get them for deals online. They're not niche, they're definitely designers, and they definitely utilize this note of Petitgrain. But next we're going to a fragrance that's fairly new, came out last year from the house of PENHALIGON'S, and this is the Impudent Cousin Matthew here. So this one is a Petitgrain bomb. So if you like that bitter green, earthy, orangey kind of a smell, along with mandarin orange and patchouli, this one's definitely going to satisfy. So for me, this one seems like a more amplified eau de cologne. Think 4711, Neroli, Portofino, and things like that. But here we're using the Petitgrain, the bitter leaves of that bitter orange tree. Now in this, you also do experience some floral touches. I feel like there are some neroli or orange blossom blossom type notes in here because there's some floral see there, but it's mostly very woody from the Petitgrain and citrusy from the mandarin orange, and there's that sexy patchouli that sparkles in here as well. It's a great scent. It's wonderful to wear in the summertime, and again, it's bittersweet with bitterness from the Petitgrain, sweetness from the mandarin orange, and earthy woodiness from patchouli. Anyway, this is PENHALIGON'S The Impudent Cousin Matthew. Check it out. That's from their Portraits collection. Now this next one I am really obsessed with, and it's a brand I don't speak too much about, but this was my very first love at first sniff fragrances from this house. It's a fragrance niche house from France, the south of France, that has 100 ml bottles for under $100. This is Parfums Berdoux, and this is SELVA do Brazil. So here, loads of Petitgrain. It is a very bright, earthy, woody, juicy, citrusy kind of experience, but not necessarily so juicy. It doesn't flow. It's more like a denser juicy, but the Petitgrain is really top-notch Petitgrain here. It smells green, it's sparkly, it's effervescent, and it smells great. Ultra green, ultra wonderful. And as soon as you put your nose on it, it kind of reminds me a little bit of this, but the tonka beans and the gaiac wood in here gives it more depth and density, whereas this one doesn't have those kind of depth and density. It's more clearer, like lighter to wear here, even though it's citrusy, but very woody here. It does have that in the as a backbone. It's kind of like intensifies the fragrance, but the first smell is amazing. It smells like this, and it's wonderful. It's a different experience. It's funny because this one goes soapy, this one doesn't, but you can, you know, you can experience it when you're first smelling it, but then it gets settles to a more denser experience with that green, bitter Petitgrain note. It's wonderful. This one is so good, guys. As you can see, I've used plenty of it. It's not like an ultra strong fragrance. It's also not a wimp. And if you like that bittersweet, kind of a tart, earthy, woody start of the Petitgrain, which settles to a woody kind of tonka beanie kind of settlement or base notes, then you're going to love this one. This is SELVA do Brazil, and it's from the house of Berdoux or Parfums Berdoux. And these fragrances are around $85 or $90. It could even be $80 for 100 ml. So it's niche, but it's less than $100. All right, so we're going to venture off into a couple of fragrances I haven't been speaking a lot about recently because I kind of want to like do a variety. I speak a lot about similar fragrances, and I'm kind of like deciding, let's focus on stuff that I haven't been talking about that I have in my collection. So this one I bought almost 2 years ago in Rome, Italy, from the house of Profumum Roma, from their main store, their flagship store. This is called Orangea, and even though it's called Orangea, you're assuming oranges, but it's all Petitgrain. And of course it comes from the same tree, the bitter orange tree, the Petitgrain and the bitter oranges and the orange blossom and Neroli and things like that. And this one smells phenomenal. It actually kind of does remind me a little bit of this, but they go in different directions. When you put your nose on them, you'll get kind of a similar bitter green, Petitgrain note. But this one goes a lot citrusier and a little aromatic with a woody dry down, but it's so good at the top. It smells fantastic. It's wonderful. It's bitter green, bittersweet, bitter citrusy, woody kind of a smell that it's just really like sparkly and effervescent. And when I was wearing this in Italy, I bought it in September, and it was really hot and humid there. It performed so excellently. I feel like this is like my number one or number two toss up with Aqua Viva from this house. I love a lot of their fragrances. I've got probably about 9 of them, maybe 10. And this one keeps coming up at the top. I haven't been speaking a lot about them, but I wanted to pull it out for this video because it features Petitgrain as a very dominant note. If you like this note, you got to check out Orangea. Or if you have it and you didn't know, can you smell this Petitgrain note? Let me know. Put a comment down so I can find out. Anyway, this is Profumum Roma Orangea. I'm going to go to this next fragrance from the house of Parfums and NICOLAI. This is Cap Neroli. Now this one has the name Neroli, and it is from the same tree, of course, bitter orange tree, or the Bigarad tree. And so they're using Neroli, they're using orange blossom. And I've mentioned the difference between Neroli and orange blossom. Again, it's the different distillation process. Neroli is one way, orange blossom is another way. Comes from the same tree, just like the Petitgrain does. So it's got Neroli, orange blossom, Petitgrain. Then you throw in some spicy, kind of aromatic herbal note of rosemary, and then throw in some oak moss and mint and orange. This one's really wonderful, guys. Cap Neroli is so good. It was launched 2 years ago, and I'm obsessed with it. I think when this launched 2 years ago, I kind of became obsessed and overly obsessed with Neroli because I love this note. Anyway, I've loved it ever since when I first picked up this back in 2001. This is the year they launched this. But I come back to it over and over again. And here it kind of like, you know, kind of like resurrected my interest in this note a lot more, even though I've been featuring it here and there. But this one's a fantastic. It's great wear. It's fresh, refreshing, loads of flowers from the citrus tree, the bitter orange tree, and of course, Petitgrain. Petitgrain is amazing. It's a wonderful note, and this is a great, great fragrance that features not only the Petitgrain, but the Neroli and the orange blossom. So this is Parfums and Nicolai Cap Neroli. Now this next one I did feature over the weekend in a citrus fragrances video. This is HEELEY's Oranges and Lemons, Say the Bells of St. Clements. It's a long name. Sometimes I forget what I'm saying, but this features the Petitgrain very, very dominantly, like it's one of the main players. But once again, it's complementing the Neroli, same tree again. The bitter orange tree, Neroli, Petitgrain all together. But this also has lemons, bergamot, orange, tea, mandarin. So it's basically take your eau de cologne style fragrance, 4711, Neroli, Portofino, things like that, and amplify it, make it a lot more interesting and a little more intense to wear. So it does last a little longer. But you know what? This one, as soon as I put my nose to it, is just like sparkles everywhere. Fantastic smell. It's just, the citruses just come alive with this one. And again, they're all kind of similar in the same ballpark. You just have to kind of put your nose on whichever one sounds great to you. Get a sample, go to a store, sample it, and see which works best to you, because some of them might work more than others. I'm obsessed with this note, and I love all of these fragrances, and some of them, as I was talking about, like LALIQUE's white, that doesn't smell like this at all because it goes in a different direction, even though it uses that note of Petitgrain. Here it goes into that very clean, soapy, fresh citrus, Petitgrain, Neroli, orange blossom kind of a direction, which is fantastic. Anyway, HEELEY's Oranges and Lemons is a great, great scent. Next up is another oddball fragrance that I haven't spoken too much about, but I've discovered that it has a big dosage of Petitgrain. This is from a Spanish house, fashion house called Adolfo Dominguez, and this is Agua Fresca, this one right here. So this one is fairly inexpensive and kind of goes classic a little bit, but it features Petitgrain very, very dominantly. To me, it's like a fougere barbershop, but Petitgrain is a main player here. Loads of Petitgrain, and it's bitter, it's sweet, it's woody, it's citrusy, nicely blended with loads of vetiver here. There's loads of vetiver. It's earthy and woody. There's some bergamot. That's what gives it the citrusy touches, because you get it from the Petitgrain, but it goes more woody. Now we're getting it juicy with the actual juice of the citrus with bergamot. There's some pine here, and I think the pine kind of throws it to a classic direction. I don't see pine come up too much in fragrances for men lately, except for some of the Bottega Venetas. Then throw in some other aromatic notes of marjoram and rosemary, so you got a kind of like a fougere-like fragrance here. It's fresh, it's refreshing, it's not a big, dense, barbershop-y fragrance because it's more of a fresh, refreshing. And this one kind of goes in the direction of that Le Frenchy from the House of Guerlain, as I was talking about recently. Anyway, if you don't know this one, check it out. I've had it in my collection for a while. I pulled it up because of the Petitgrain note, because it has the bittersweet qualities of the Petitgrain in here as you're wearing it, and it smells great. Anyway, Adolfo Dominguez Agua Fresca. This house has a lot of fragrances. Every time I've gone to Spain into their department stores, I've seen a whole department of their fragrances, but the only thing I own is this one. I like to explore more, so if you have any recommendations, let me know. All right, we have two more to talk about. So this next one is from the house of Maison Margiela. This is Under the Lemon Trees. So it's interesting, the more I've worn this fragrance, the more I've realized that there's tea here. It acts like a tea fragrance. It's very, very tea-like. The qualities of the fragrance is very tea-like. So, but it says Under the Lemon Trees, and it has lime, tea, and Petitgrain. So it's interesting because it's almost like a, when I was very young, my grandmother used to put lemon, squeezed lemon in her tea. I never was a fan of it, but she loved it. And it kind of reminds me of a lemon squeezed tea. Lots of lemons here because it smells lemony, but they're not using lemons. They're actually using lime to create the lemon accord. So there's lemons, there's Petitgrain, and there's tea. The Petitgrain, I think, along with the lime, is what's giving us the lemon-like accord. That's why it's called Under the Lemon Trees. So the tea, there's mate, there's a very green experience here, musk. It's a very, very calming kind of a citrus fragrance. For me, I find tea fragrances to be very calming, soothing, relaxing, comforting, and I get that with this one. So it's a different kind of a fragrance featuring Petitgrain, and it's wonderful. I love it, and it's bittersweet at the same time and very tea-like. Under the Lemon Trees, check it out if you don't know it. And as I said, I am featuring some stuff that I haven't talked about a lot lately, and glad I found fragrances in my collection that I haven't spoken a lot about that features the Petitgrain note. I'm going to leave it off with this last but not least fragrance, and again, these are not, and I want to also mention that these fragrances are not ranked. I'm just giving you options. And this last fragrance is probably a fragrance community staple for men fragrances. It's from the house of Dunhill, and it's Icon. Did you guys know this had a pretty prominent note of Petitgrain in the fragrance? Loads of it in here, loads of it. For me, this one actually, it's interesting. It reminds me a little bit of Terre de Hermes, a little bit, not a lot. It reminds me of a little bit of this, because it's kind of bittersweet and earthy woody. It reminds me a little bit of this. So basically take those three fragrances and you somehow get something like this, but the Petitgrain is very bitter here. There's also black pepper. The black pepper is probably prominently standing out, and of course there's vetiver, and that's why it reminds me of Terre de Hermes, but it's unique creation. Again, it does hint at those fragrances, but it's on its own, it's unique, and this one smells of Petitgrain a lot. The bitterness, it's a bitter fragrance. It's bittersweet to me, and I like that contrast of the bitterness from the bitter notes, of course the vetiver and the Petitgrain, with the sweeter notes, and I think there's bergamot in here as well, and perhaps some other citruses. Anyway, it's a wonderful fragrance, and you can get this at a really, really great price. If you're on the budget, this one definitely is a great, great fragrance to get. I love this one. It's one of my favorite designers, and I probably put it in a top 25 designer fragrances of all time video. Maybe I should do a top 50, but it's a great, great scent. I love it. Anyway, Dunhill's Icon is the last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about today. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on Petitgrain, guys. Do you know this note? Do you enjoy it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I know some of you don't like citruses as much as I do. I love citruses. I just love the way they smell, but let me know if you hate them. And did you know what Petitgrain was? Did you realize some of the fragrances that you have features this note? Let me know also. Put a comment down so I can find out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope to do a few more videos like this featuring certain notes in the future. If you have any ideas of what videos you want me to do, please send an email to lfsgquestions@gmail.com. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. As I said, if you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Otherwise, please like this video, please share it, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.